Evening, everybody. This is DrHack, and today we're going to take on White's most fantastical approach to the Caro-Kann. He thinks he can beat us with a weird third move. Think again, Mr. White. Think again. Let's do this. All right, now before we get into the fantasy variation, what I would like to do is I would like to circle back to something from the last video and just remind you that when I'm teaching this stuff, I am not filling in all the blanks, and I'm not filling them in deliberately, okay? Now, I want to point out one of the ones that I'm not filling in here because I think it's worth taking a look at. And I think it's even worth taking a look at with a computer engine on, okay? And when we were looking at this, I said something like, White should be looking for attacks on this diagonal, and Black should be looking for ways to block that attack, right? I think I said that. And the thing that I overlooked deliberately here was, and I expect this to happen once, and if you guys can find your way to play your way out of it, fantastic if you do it on the first try. But if you don't do it on the first try, what I would expect you to do is I would expect you to say, oh, well, this was surely a good enough position. If something like this looks like it should work, there's got to be a way out of it. I need to find it. And you need to go and search deeper until you find a way to beat the guy that does this. Okay? Now here's the move that I want to look at. And the reason why I have this open is because I want you to see the computer. Okay? So White sacrificed his queen. And if you were just to take this at face value and say, well, that's silly, White will never do that, well, think again. This is actually quite a dangerous attack that he's put together. He loses a queen, but we actually can't take this knight, because if we did, he would end up getting our queen back as well. And you can see the computer ticking back in his favor as soon as we did that, right? Because the only way we can get out of this is to block, and he's going to get the queen. So we go back and we go, well, we can't take the knight then. How in the world are we going to not lose a whole bunch of stuff here? And it gets so messy that I would expect you to have a real trouble with this the first time it happens. Okay, but then I would expect you to buckle down and say, you know what? DrHack says this is okay. I need to figure out how to actually beat this now that it's happened once. Right? And that's where your improvement really comes from, is learning about this weird stuff that goes on. Okay? That's all I want to say on that. You guys can follow this one deeper into the computer and learn what happens here and how it happens. It's a complete train wreck of a line. So good luck with that. But for now, I'm going to close this up and we're going to get back to our main ideas for the day. Okay, and the move that we're thinking of here, of checking out to see if it's any good for White, is this one. And you know, it's not a bad idea what he just did, because we would really love to have this bishop out here somewhere before we close the pawns in. How likely is that to happen with two pawns guarding those squares, right? Not very likely. And even if we were to try to take this one, and then the other guy would trade back, well, the queen is still, defending that square. So we're still not going to be able to put the bishop in either of these places. Right? And so we look at ourselves and look at them and, look at the most interesting man in the world and then look at them again. And we go, all right, well, what did he give up? Because he must have given something up. What can we do to take advantage? And let's flip the board and let's look at it from his point of view and try to discover what he just gave up. Now, the one that I think everybody will point out right away, or at least I hope they will, is that this king got a little bit less safe because the pawn is no longer sitting here. In this particular version of this particular opening of this particular, that doesn't matter, okay? But what does matter is that this knight can no longer sit on this square. He gave up development. He can't put a knight there. He moved a pawn instead of a piece, which is giving up a turn. And now these two pieces over here both want to move through e2 to get into the game. This one specifically, right? It only has two squares to sit on, and these two are covered by pawns. So now the knight and the bishop are trying to fight through who goes through this square first. Well, if the bishop does it, that's kind of okay. That would be his ideal situation, isn't it? So we go back and we go, well, okay, is there anything that we can do to make his life hard? Because that's really our job, isn't it? We're playing the opponent. We're the spoiler. And I want you to take a look at this move. This move showed up in about 2000, early 2000s for the first time. And people didn't recognize the strength of it until maybe just 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when everybody started winning with it. And we wonder, what does that actually do? And now take a look at these two guys again. If this one were to move out to here, he loses a pawn. And so now the bishop and the knight are both fighting over exactly one square to sit on. So how is he ever going to castle to the king side? And I would argue that he is not. Okay? And that means that by moving the queen to b6 this early, what we've actually done is we've stunted his development to the point where he can't even castle to the king side anymore. And that is huge, right? If we want to attack his king, we want to attack it when it's in the middle of the board. It's so much easier to do. Okay, and so by just parking a queen here, we're on our way, right? Now let's kind of feel it out. What do we think white should do here? Well, if I was him, you know, and I knew that my opening was just refuted by some theory, I would probably look at my pieces one at a time and go, well, I don't want to develop that one, and I don't want to develop that one, and, you know, I don't want to develop that one, because, I guess I'm going to develop the knight, right? And so the knight would probably hop into the game. And that actually makes a lot of sense. You know, he's attacking this thing again. We have to do something about it. And I think as soon as we give up on the idea that our bishop has to be out here, the sooner the better on this one, guys. He's done this on purpose. He's not going to let you have it, right? So let's just go ahead and play the e6 move and cover it up. And then you go back to the ideas that we had before. If he takes it, we know to play against this piece. Let's see what that looks like for a minute. And let's go ahead and develop this one, because I see that maybe we should look at a trap. Do you think you would ever take this pawn? Right? And as I said the words trap and do you think, your warning bells should hopefully have gone off and you say, no, that sounds like a really bad idea. Well, now you got to figure out why, and I'm not going to tell you. Okay? Well, that is a really bad idea to take that pawn. Trust me on that. Okay, so he goes like this, and we go, okay, well, how do we go after this guy if our bishop can't get out? Right? And we're looking at it and we're realizing, hopefully we're realizing, that his bishop can't go down this way. And actually this pawn's in the way of his knight and queen ever developing the attack, so he's one move slower at least. He has to move this guy first. Okay, well, that's something. So let's try to get rid of this guy, as we always do. And I think as soon as we play this move, and he realizes again, hey, I have to, you know, defend this pawn, he might do that. And if he does that, he's trapped his own bishop in. And we go like this, and we go, equal, yeah. We do our little dance, and we go out in the street for a minute, dance back and forth, and then run back inside because our clock's ticking, and play the game. Okay, so the other thing I want to warn you about is that this position is rife with traps. And the reason why people play the fantasy variation is because they love trappy things. They love to be able to do stuff like this and hope that you fall for it. Well, what would happen if you took the pawn up here? Well, let's look at it closer, right? Well, we see white's knight's under attack. It's got to move. What if it moves and generates, a threat? He's about to win a rook. Well, we better do something about that, huh? How about we move our king to defend it? That sounds like a good idea. And then he does something, like this one. Because if you look at the queen, she doesn't have any real squares to move to. She can't move here. She can't move here, right? She can't take either of these pawns. The only place she can really move to is here. And if he takes that square away, she's completely trapped. She has exactly 0 squares. The queen is in a checkmating net, kind of, in a way. And so even if we were to do something like this, I think maybe here we just lose the game. Because what if he forces us to take the rook? And then what if he forces us to get out of check? And then we lose a queen. And since we can only take one of these two pieces at a time, we're not going to get them both. We're only going to get one of them. We're definitely behind in material here. Because we didn't get 3 minor pieces for the queen. We didn't get anything enough. We got a rook and a whatever we took there, a knight or a bishop. Okay, so we have to be real careful not to fall for these traps, or at least when you do fall for them, just fall for them one time. and try to go back and study it and say, hey, was this actually a trap? Was there a way to beat this or wasn't there? And just keep learning from there. Okay, great. Well, he doesn't have to take that pawn. He doesn't have to play into the stuff that we know. He could push past. And if he pushes past, we kind of know this too a little bit, right? We know that their big attacks come here. And I would say that the most likely one is actually going to hit at g7 on this one, just because this pawn is in such an awkward place. You know, it's already started moving, which means they're probably going to have the idea later to keep it moving. And maybe this knight will go to the weird track, right, where it ends up here, attacking there, instead of this track where it ends up attacking this one. I don't know, guys. You never know what your opponent's going to do until they do it. The one thing we do know is that our bishop did not make it outside the pawn chain. And that means our king will definitely not be safe on this side of the board. Okay? So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to be very, very cautious about where we place our king. And that means that maybe our king is going to stay right smack in the middle. Perhaps. Maybe, because of that, we're going to do some kind of differenter types of attacks. And I believe since our queen is on this side of the board, it makes perfect sense that we lead on this side of the board and try to attack there. Which means our knight would be here, and we'd be pushing this pawn up, right? Or we'd just be pushing the pawn up and hoping our bishop can get out and cause some difficulties for him on this diagonal, which it could happen. Okay. And that's where I'm going to leave that one as well. And that only leaves us with one option for white. And that is to do neither of those things. Don't take, don't push past. Well, what should he do then? And we scratch our heads and we go, Remember, he's having so much trouble figuring out what to develop because of how much we're attacking all of these things. This doesn't work now. We could totally take the pawn. Because this move just doesn't exist, right? We'll just take it. And so here we are, and we're thinking about how best to extract our queen out and save the pawn forever and just be ahead. Great, you know? What is he going to do? This is where I think the fantasy variation completely breaks down for white. Because their very next idea, nearly impossible to come up with, unless you've really studied this a ton, right? And I think the next idea has to be something like this. And that is absolutely bizarre, right? How in the world does that make any sense at all? Especially when black's attempting to attack on that side of the board, right? I don't know. I'm going to let you guys continue on with this one on your own. I sure hope this helps someone. You guys take care now. Bye.